Captain Jake Morrison floated near the main window of the Terra Nova, watching stars drift by like tiny diamonds on black cloth. The ship had been traveling for 3 months now, moving through empty space far from Earth. Jake's crew of 25 people were all doing their jobs, keeping the big ship running while they looked for new planets and signs of life. The mission was supposed to be boring. They would scan planets, take pictures, collect data, and go home. Nobody expected to find anything exciting out here in the middle of nowhere. Jake liked boring missions. Boring meant everyone stayed safe and went home to their families. Lisa. Park sat at her communication station, headphones covering her ears as she listened to radio signals from space. Most of the sounds were just noise from stars and planets, nothing special. But today something was different. She frowned and adjusted her controls, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. "Captain," she called out, pulling off her headphones. "I'm getting something weird here. This doesn't sound like normal space noise." Jake pushed himself away from the window and floated over to Lisa's station. The bridge of the Terra Nova was quiet except for the gentle hum of computers and air. Systems. Most of the crew were sleeping or working in other parts of the ship. "What kind of weird?" Jake asked, grabbing a handle to stop himself from floating past Lisa's chair. "It's like music, but not music. And it keeps repeating the same pattern. Over and over." Lisa played the sound through the bridge speakers. It was a low, flowing sound that seemed to rise and fall like ocean waves. Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his science station across the bridge. Alex was the smartest person on the ship, always reading and studying something new. He had thick glasses and messy brown hair that stuck up in all directions because of the zero gravity. "That's not natural," Alex said, floating over to look at Lisa's screen. "Natural signals from space don't repeat like that. They're random." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In all his years flying ships through space, he had learned that weird things usually meant trouble. How far away is it coming from? Lisa checked her instruments. "About 2 million kilometers. Wait, that's strange." She looked confused. "The signal is getting stronger, but my scanners don't show anything out there. No ships, no space stations, nothing." "Maybe your scanners are broken," suggested Ben Clark from the security station. Ben was a big man with short black hair and muscles that came from years of military training. He always expected trouble and was usually ready for it. "My scanners are fine," Lisa said, sounding a little annoyed. "No, there's just nothing there to scan." Alex was studying the signal pattern on his computer screen. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he ran different tests. "This is definitely artificial. Someone or something is making this signal on purpose." Jake felt the hair on his arms stand up. In 20 years of space travel, he had never encountered alien life. Most people believed aliens existed somewhere in the galaxy, but nobody had ever found proof. The idea that they might be the first crew to make contact was both exciting and terrifying. "Red alert," Jake announced. The bridge lights changed from normal white to soft red, and a gentle alarm sounded throughout the ship. Within minutes, all the key crew members were floating onto the bridge, looking sleepy but alert. Dr. Kate Williams arrived first, her medical bag floating beside her. She was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. Behind her came Danny Foster, the ship's main engineer. Danny was young, but knew more about keeping spaceships running than most people twice his age. "What's the situation, Captain?" asked, strapping herself into an empty chair. "We've got an unknown signal that might be from aliens," Jake explained. "Alex thinks it's artificial." Danny whistled softly. "Real aliens? That's either really cool or really bad. Usually both," Ben said, checking his weapon systems. Greg Adams, the ship's pilot, was the last to arrive on the bridge. Greg could fly anything with engines and had gotten them out of trouble more than once. "Do we run or do we investigate?" he asked. Before Jake could answer, Lisa gasped, "Captain, you need to see this." Everyone turned to look at the main screen, where Lisa had put up a view of the space in front of their ship. At first, there was nothing but stars and empty darkness. Then something began to appear. It started as a tiny point of light, no bigger than a star. But it grew quickly, becoming brighter and larger with each passing second. The light was not white like a star, but had colors that shifted and moved like oil on water. "What is that?" Kate whispered. The light continued to grow until it was the size of a small moon. As it got closer, they could see it was not solid like a planet or ship. It looked like it was made of crystal, with smooth surfaces that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. The crystal structure was shaped like a giant diamond, with sharp points and flat sides that sparkled with inner light. "It's beautiful," Danny said. "It's big," Greg added. "It's really big." Alex was taking readings as fast as he could. It's not giving off any heat or radiation. According to my instruments, it shouldn't be glowing at all. But there it is, bright as a small sun. The crystal structure stopped growing when it was about the same size as their ship. It floated in space about a kilometer away, slowly turning and showing different faces of its diamond shape. The signal that Lisa had been hearing was now coming from inside the crystal. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "the signal is changing. Not just repeating anymore. It's like it's trying to say something." Jake stared at the alien structure floating outside their ship. Everything about this situation felt dangerous, but also incredibly important. If this really was first contact with alien life, then every decision he made in the next few minutes might change human history forever. "Open a channel," he decided. "Let's try to talk to them." Lisa nodded and adjusted her controls. "Channel open, Captain." Jake took a deep breath. He had practiced this moment in his mind many times, but actually doing it felt completely different. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth ship Terra Nova. We come in peace. Please respond." For a long moment, nothing happened. The crystal continued to turn slowly in space, its surfaces catching and reflecting light from distant stars. Then something extraordinary occurred. A shape began to form inside the crystal. It was like watching smoke gather into the outline of a person, but made of light instead of smoke. The shape became clearer and more solid, until it looked like a tall, thin person standing inside the crystal structure. "I am the observer," a voice said inside their heads. It was not coming through their radio or speakers. The voice was gentle but strange, like hearing someone speak in a dream. "I speak for the Zanari people." Everyone on the bridge looked at each other with wide eyes. No. They were actually talking to an alien. "I have traveled far to study your kind," the observer continued. "We have watched your species from a distance and wish to understand how you think and feel. Will you permit me to learn about human consciousness?" Jake's mouth felt dry. This was the moment every human had imagined since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. They were not alone, and now the aliens wanted to study them. "What kind of study?" Jake asked carefully. "I will examine the thoughts and memories of some of your people. The process is harmless and will help my people understand yours. We have done this with many species across the galaxy." Ben leaned close to Jake's ear. "Captain, this could be dangerous. We don't know what they really want." Jake nodded but kept looking at the alien figure inside the crystal. "How many species have you studied?" 3007, the observer replied. "Your species will be 3008. The number was overwhelming. 3,000 different alien species, and humans were just one more to be cataloged and studied." Jake wondered what made humans special enough to study, or if they were special at all. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Everyone was staring at the alien figure inside the crystal ship. The observer stood perfectly still, waiting for an answer. Its body looked like it was made of flowing light, sometimes clear and sometimes glowing brighter. "What exactly happens during this study?" Jake asked. He needed to know more before he let this alien touch anyone's mind. "I will connect with one person's thoughts," the observer explained. Its voice still came from inside their heads instead of through their ears. "I will see their memories and understand how they think. It takes only a few minutes and causes no pain." Dr. Kate Williams floated closer to Jake. "Captain, we should be careful. We don't know what this could do to someone's brain." "I understand your concern," the observer said, somehow hearing Kate even though she had whispered. "I have performed this process 3,000 times on different species. No being has ever been harmed." Danny Foster raised his hand like he was in school. "I'll do it," he said. Everyone turned to look at the young engineer. Danny had always been brave, sometimes too brave for his own good. "Danny, you don't have to volunteer," Jake said. "Someone has to go first, right?" Danny smiled. "Besides, I'm curious about how this works. Maybe I can learn something about alien technology." Ben Clark shook his head. "This is a bad idea. We should wait and think about this more. The longer we wait, the more nervous we'll all get," Danny said. "Let's just get it over with." Shh. Studied Danny's face. Young man looked determined and not scared at all. Jake had learned to trust his crew's judgment, and Danny was one of the smartest people on the ship when it came to understanding how things worked. "Okay," Jake decided, "but we monitor everything. At the first sign of trouble, we stop." Dr. Alex Turner quickly set up his medical scanners to watch Danny's brain activity. Kate prepared her medical equipment in case something went wrong. The rest of the crew gathered around to watch what might be the most important moment in human history. "How do we do this?" Danny asked, looking at the alien figure in the crystal. "I will come to your ship," the observer said. "Please prepare a space for me to appear." The crew looked at each other nervously. Having the alien actually come inside their ship felt much more dangerous than talking to it from a distance. The main cargo bay, Jake decided. It's big enough, and away from important ship systems. 20 minutes later, the crew gathered in the cargo bay. It was a large empty room with gray metal walls and bright lights. Danny sat in a chair in the center of the room while the others stood around the edges, ready to help if needed. The observer appeared slowly, like morning fog forming in sunlight. First, there was nothing, then a faint outline, then a figure that looked almost human, but made of shifting light. It was tall and thin, with long arms and a face that was hard to see clearly. When it moved, trails of light followed behind it. "This is incredible," Alex whispered, watching his instruments. "It's giving off energy, but not heat or radiation. I don't understand how it's possible." The observer moved closer to Danny, who sat very still in his chair. "Are you ready?" the alien asked. "Ready as I'll ever be," Danny replied. The observer raised one hand toward Danny's head. A soft blue light began to glow around its fingers. The light grew brighter and reached out toward Danny, like gentle fingers made of electricity. "Here we go," Danny said. The blue light touched Danny's forehead and spread across his head like water. Danny's eyes closed, and he leaned back in his chair, looking peaceful and relaxed. The observer stood perfectly still, its form glowing brighter as it made contact with Danny's mind. For the first few seconds, everything seemed normal. Danny breathed slowly and steadily.
"Rally the observers."
Light pulsed gently like a heartbeat.
"Alexis."
Instruments showed normal brain activity. Then something changed. The observer's form flickered like a candle in the wind. The smooth, flowing shape became rough and unsteady. The alien's light began flashing in quick, random patterns instead of the gentle pulse from before. "Something's wrong," Kate said, watching her medical readouts. "Danny's brain activity is getting very complex, but he seems fine." Danny was still sitting peacefully in his chair, but inside his mind, chaos was beginning. The observer had expected to find thoughts organized like books on shelves, easy to read and understand. Instead, it found something like a storm. Danny was thinking about the alien probe, but he was also thinking about his breakfast. His sister Amy back on Earth, and a broken engine he had fixed last week. All of these thoughts were happening at the same time, and they were all connected to each other in ways that made no sense. The observer tried to focus on one simple memory. It chose Danny's memory of his childhood dog, a golden retriever named Rex. This should have been easy to understand, just a boy and his pet dog, but Danny's memory of Rex was not simple at all. It included the smell of wet dog fur on rainy days, the sound of Rex's bark when strangers came to the door, the way Rex would steal food from the kitchen table, and the terrible day when Rex got sick and had to be put to sleep. All of these memories came with feelings. Danny had loved Rex, felt guilty about not playing with him enough, been sad when he died, and learned about responsibility from taking care of him. The feelings were mixed up with the memories in ways that the observer could not separate, but it got worse. Danny's memory of Rex connected to other memories. Taking care of Rex had taught Danny to be responsible, which helped him become a good engineer. Being a good engineer made him feel proud of his work. Feeling proud of his work made him want to do his best for his crewmates. Wanting to do his best for his crewmates connected back to loving Rex and not wanting to let down the people he cared about. The observer's form flickered more violently. In all the other species it had studied, memories were separate things that could be examined one at a time. Human memories were like a giant spider web, where touching one strand made all the other strands vibrate. The alien looks sick, Greg. Observed. The observer's light was flashing rapidly now, and its shape kept changing like it couldn't decide what form to take. Inside Danny's mind, things were getting more complicated. The observer discovered that Danny was not just remembering things from the past. He was also thinking about the future, imagining what might happen, and worrying about things that might go wrong. Danny was wondering if the alien probe would hurt him, while simultaneously hoping he could learn something useful, and also thinking about whether this first contact would be good or bad for humanity. He was doing all of this thinking while also automatically monitoring the sounds around him to make sure the ship was running properly, because that was his job as an engineer. The observer tried to retreat from the complex web of Danny's thoughts, but found itself caught. Danny's mind had noticed the alien presence and was now curious about it. Without meaning to, Danny was thinking about the observer, while the observer was trying to read his thoughts. This created a loop that trapped both minds together. Danny began wondering how alien minds worked, which made him think about human minds, which made him think about thinking itself, which made him aware that he was thinking about thinking. The observer found itself pulled deeper into layers of human consciousness that it had never encountered in any other species. "We need to stop this," Kate said. The observer was now flickering so rapidly that it looked like a broken light bulb. Both of them are in distress. But before anyone could act, Danny opened his eyes. He looked confused, but not hurt. "Wow," he said slowly. "That was weird. I could feel it trying to understand my thoughts, but it was like trying to catch smoke with a net." The observer's form suddenly snapped back to its normal shape, but the light was much dimmer than before. It stood silently for a long moment, as if trying to understand what had just happened. "Your mind is ... The observer paused, searching for words. "Very complicated. More complicated than any mind I have encountered before. Is that bad?" Danny asked. "I do not know," the observer replied honestly. "I need time to understand what I experienced. Your thoughts do not follow patterns that I recognize. They move in many directions at once." Jake stepped forward. "You both okay?" Danny stood up and stretched. "I feel fine. Actually, I feel pretty good. It was like having someone else inside my head for a minute, but they were trying to be polite about it." The observer's form was slowly becoming brighter again. "I must analyze what I learned before attempting another connection. Human consciousness is unlike anything in my experience." "What makes it so different?" Alex asked. As a scientist, he was fascinated by the alien's reaction. "Other minds think in sequence," the observer explained. "One thought, then another thought, then another. Human minds appear to think many thoughts simultaneously, and all thoughts connect to all other thoughts. It is like trying to read a book where every word is written on top of every other word." The crew looked at each other with new interest. They had never thought of human minds as being special or unusual. To them, thinking many thoughts at once seemed perfectly normal. "Will you try again?" Jake asked. The observer was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, but I must modify my approach. I was not prepared for the complexity of human thought. Next time, I will be more careful." As the alien figure faded away and returned to its crystal ship, the crew realized they had just learned. Psalm. Asterisk, 2 days passed before the observer contacted the Terra Nova again. During that time, the alien crystal ship had remained perfectly still in space, like a giant diamond floating in the darkness. The crew could see lights moving inside it, but the alien did not respond to any of their messages. Jake spent those 2 days thinking about what had happened with Danny. The young engineer seemed completely normal after the mind probe, but the alien had been clearly disturbed by what it found. Jake wondered what made human thoughts so different from other alien species. Captain Lisa called from her communication station. The observer is trying to contact us again. Jake floated over to Lisa's station. The bridge was quiet in the artificial night cycle, with only a few crew members on duty. Put it through. The observer's voice appeared in their heads again, but it sounded different now. It's less confident and more careful.
Captain Morrison.
I request permission to attempt another study. I have modified my techniques to better handle human thought patterns. Are you sure it's safe? Jake asked. He was responsible for his crew's safety, and the first probe had clearly been harder on the alien than expected. I believe so. I've spent much time analyzing what I learned from Engineer Foster. I think I understand the problem now. Dr. Kate Williams floated onto the bridge, looking tired. She had been studying all the medical data from Danny's probe. Session. The readings were unusual, Captain, but Danny shows no signs of harm. His brain activity returned to normal within minutes. Who do you want to study next? Jake asked the observer.
Ass.
I would like to examine someone who works with communication and information. Perhaps they will have more organized thought patterns. Lisa looked up from her station. That would be me, I guess. I handle all the ship's communications. Jake frowned. He did not like putting another crew member at risk, but they needed to understand what the aliens wanted. Lisa, you don't have to volunteer. Danny was fine, and I'm curious about this too, Lisa said. Besides, maybe I can help the alien understand us better. Communication is my job. Ben Clark shook his head. I still think this is dangerous. We're letting an alien mess around inside our heads. But we're learning about aliens too, Alex pointed out. This is the greatest scientific discovery in human history. We have to take some risks. Jake made his decision. Okay, but we do this. Carefully, same setup as before, full monitoring. An hour later, the crew gathered in the cargo bay again. Lisa sat in the same chair Danny had used, looking calm and ready. The observer appeared more slowly this time, taking shape like smoke gathering in the air. I have prepared new methods, the observer said. I will focus on smaller sections of your mind instead of trying to understand everything at once. Sounds good to me, Lisa replied. Just try not to break anything important. The observer raised its hand toward Lisa's head, and the familiar blue light began to glow. Lisa closed her eyes as the light touched her forehead and spread across her skull like gentle water. At first, everything seemed to go better than the first time. The observer's form remained steady, and Lisa breathed peacefully in her chair. Alex's instruments showed normal brain activity patterns. Then the observer made a terrible mistake. It tried to focus on Lisa's communication skills, not realizing that Lisa was still doing her job even while being probed. Lisa's mind was simultaneously monitoring 17 different radio frequencies, listening for signals from Earth, tracking local space traffic, and maintaining contact with other parts of the ship. She did all of this automatically, without thinking about it. It's the same way other people breathe without thinking about breathing. The observer found itself drowning in a flood of information. Lisa was processing radio signals, translating a technical manual from Chinese in her head, composing a message to her brother Pete back on Mars, and analyzing the aliens' own communication methods all at the same time. But it got much worse. Lisa's brain was trained to handle multiple information streams. So when the observer connected to her mind, she automatically treated it as another communication channel. She began trying to communicate back with the alien while it was trying to read her thoughts. The observer's form started flickering again, but more violently than during Danny's session. Lisa was not just thinking multiple thoughts like Danny had been. She was actively processing multiple streams of complex information and trying to organize them all simultaneously. Something's wrong, Kate said, watching her medical instruments. Lisa's brain activity is off the charts, but she seems comfortable. Inside Lisa's mind, chaos was spreading. The observer tried to follow one simple thought, but Lisa's brain kept switching between different tasks faster than the alien could. Track. She would start thinking about a radio signal, then jump to translating a word in Chinese, then remember something about her brother, then analyze a pattern in the alien's mental probe technique. The observer discovered that Lisa was unconsciously trying to learn the alien language while being probed. She was treating the mental connection like a new type of communication system to be understood and mastered. Her mind was automatically breaking down the observer's thought patterns and trying to figure out how alien communication worked. The alien is getting unstable again, Greg observed. The observer's light was flashing in rapid, chaotic patterns, and its shape kept changing as if it could not decide what form to take. The situation got worse when Lisa began multitasking with the probe itself. She started composing a report about the alien contact in her head, while simultaneously trying to establish better communication with the observer, all while continuing to monitor her regular communication duties. The observer tried to retreat, but found itself trapped in Lisa's communication protocols. She was unconsciously trying to establish a permanent mental link, the same way she would set up a new radio connection. Her mind was treating the alien probe as a communication device that needed to be properly configured and maintained. Lisa opened her eyes without breaking the mental connection. "This is fascinating," she said out loud. "I can feel how it thinks. It's like a very organized computer, but it's getting confused by how we process information." The observer's form began to fragment, splitting into multiple shapes that flickered in and out of existence. It was experiencing what could only be described as information overload. Lisa's mind was feeding it data faster than it could process, while simultaneously trying to optimize the connection for better performance. "Lisa, can you hear me?" Jake called out. "Of course I can hear you," Lisa replied. "I can also hear the radio chatter from Earth, the ship's internal communications, and the aliens' distress signals. It's having trouble with our multitasking abilities." Dr. Williams checked her instruments frantically. "Her brain is processing information at incredible speeds, but she's not showing any signs of stress or fatigue." The observer managed to speak, but its voice was fractured and unclear. "Too much ... too fast ... cannot process ... How do you manage so many streams ... Lisa tried to help by simplifying her thoughts, but this only made things worse. Tried to focus on just one thing. Her brain automatically filled the empty space with other tasks. She began analyzing why the alien was having trouble, which created new streams of thought about alien psychology, communication theory, and comparative consciousness studies. "I think I need to break the connection," Lisa said. "The poor thing is overloading." But breaking the connection proved harder than expected. Lisa's communication training had taught her to maintain multiple channels simultaneously, and her brain was now treating the alien link as just another channel to keep open. Every time she tried to close the connection, her mind automatically tried to reestablish it. The observer's form began to collapse entirely. Its shape dissolved into scattered points of light that flickered randomly around the cargo bay. Alien was experiencing a complete system breakdown as Lisa's mind continued to feed it information through multiple channels simultaneously. "Emergency shutdown," Jake ordered. "Cut all power to this section." Ben quickly shut down the cargo bay's electrical systems, plunging the room into darkness. The observer's scattered lights flickered once more and then vanished entirely. Lisa slumped forward in her chair, suddenly looking very tired. "Lisa, are you okay?" Kate asked, rushing to check on her. "I'm fine," Lisa said, rubbing her forehead. "Just a headache." That was like trying to use 20 different communication systems at once while teaching someone else how to use them too. The cargo bay lights came back on, but the observer was gone. Through the windows, they could see the alien crystal ship, but it was no longer glowing brightly. Cracks had appeared across its surface, and the lights inside were dim and flickering weakly. "I think we broke it," Danny said softly. Alex was studying his readings from the probe session. Lisa's brain was processing information at rates I've never seen before. She was handling multiple complex tasks while trying to establish permanent communication with an alien mind. No wonder it couldn't keep up. "Will it be okay?" Lisa asked, looking worried. "I don't know," Jake replied, watching the damaged crystal ship. "But I think we're starting to understand why our minds are so different from other species. We don't just think one thing at a time. We think many things at once, all the time." For 4 days, the observer's crystal ship hung in space like a broken jewel. The cracks across its surface had grown longer and deeper, and the lights inside flickered weakly like a dying fire. The crew of the Terra Nova watched and waited, wondering if the alien would try again or simply give up and leave. Jake spent those days reading reports about his crew members, trying to understand what made human minds so difficult for the observer to read. Danny had overwhelmed it with connected thoughts and emotions. Lisa had drowned it in multiple information streams and communication attempts. What would happen if it tried a third time, Captain? Alex called from his science station. The alien ship is showing new activity. Power levels are increasing. Floated over to look at Alex's readings. The crystal ship was indeed glowing brighter, and the cracks on its surface seemed to be slowly healing themselves. Looks like it's not giving up. Maybe it learned something from the first 2 attempts, Kate suggested. She had been worried about the alien's condition. Even though it was studying them without permission, she did not want to see any living being get hurt. The observer's voice suddenly filled their minds again, but it sounded different than before, weaker and more uncertain. Captain Morrison, I request one final attempt to understand human consciousness. Are you sure that's wise? Jake asked. The last 2 times didn't go very well for you. I have spent much time analyzing the data collected. I believe I can succeed if I choose a subject with simpler thought patterns, someone who works with basic tasks rather than complex information processing. Ben laughed from his security station. Good luck finding someone simple on. This ship we're all pretty complicated. What about Roy? Danny suggested. He's our maintenance guy. His job is fixing things when they break. So maybe that's simpler than engineering or communications. Roy Jenkins was working in the engine room when they called him to the bridge. He was a quiet man in his 40s, who had spent most of his life fixing things that other people broke. Roy could repair almost anything with just basic tools and a lot of patience. You want me to let the alien read my mind? Roy asked, wiping grease off his hands with a dirty rag. Why me? The observer thinks you might have simpler thought patterns than the rest of us, Jake explained. Since you work with maintenance instead of complex systems. Roy scratched his head, leaving a small smudge of grease in his gray hair. Well, I suppose someone has to do it. And I am curious about how that alien technology works. Might learn something useful. You don't have to volunteer, Kate said. We could try to find another solution. Nah, it's okay, Roy said with a shrug. If it helps us understand aliens better, I'm willing to give it a try. Besides, how complicated can maintenance work be? 2 hours later, Roy sat in the same chair in the cargo bay where Danny and Lisa had been probed. The observer appeared again, but its form was clearly damaged from the previous attempts. The flowing light that made up its body flickered and had gaps in it, like a drawing with missing pieces. I will be very careful this time, the observer said. I will examine only basic memories and simple thoughts. Take your time, Roy said. I'm not going anywhere. The observer raised its hand toward Roy's head, and the familiar blue light began to glow. Roy closed his eyes as the light touched him. For a moment, everything seemed calm and peaceful. The observer was confident this time would be different. Roy Jenkins was a maintenance worker who fixed simple mechanical problems. His mind should contain basic knowledge about tools and repair procedures, nothing like the chaos it had found in the previous subjects. The observer was completely wrong. Roy's mind turned out to be the most chaotic of all. Where Danny had connected memories to emotions, and Lisa had processed multiple information streams. Roy's consciousness was a vast storm of creative problem-solving that operated on pure intuition. An experience, the alien tried to examine Roy's memory of fixing a broken water pump last week. It expected to find a simple sequence of steps: diagnose problem, get tools, make repair, test system. Instead, it found something that defied all logic. Roy's approach to fixing things was not based on following procedures or understanding theory. It was based on a lifetime of experience with how things broke and how they could be fixed. His mind contained thousands of memories of similar repairs, all connected in ways that let him instantly recognize patterns and solutions. When Roy looked at a broken machine, his mind automatically compared it to every other broken machine he had ever seen. He would notice tiny details that reminded him of previous problems and instantly know what was wrong and how to fix it. But he could not explain how he knew these things, even to himself. The observer tried to follow Roy's thought process as he mentally worked through a hypothetical repair problem. Roy's mind jumped between visual memories of similar machines, half-remembered conversations with other technicians, intuitive hunches based on sounds and vibrations, and creative solutions that combined ideas from completely different types of equipment. "The alien is starting to flicker again," Greg observed. The observer's form was becoming unstable, just like in the previous sessions, but this time was worse. Roy was not just thinking about the probe like Danny had done, or trying to communicate with the alien like Lisa had done. Out. Trying to fix the observer itself, Roy's maintenance instincts had noticed that the alien seemed damaged and unstable. Without thinking about it, his mind began analyzing the observer's energy patterns, looking for problems that could be repaired. He started treating the mental probe as a technical challenge to be understood and improved. The observer found itself trapped in a feedback loop as Roy's mind began probing back. Roy was examining the alien consciousness with the same intuitive approach he used to diagnose broken machinery, was looking for patterns, testing responses, and trying to figure out how the alien's mind worked so he could help fix whatever was wrong with it. "Something very strange is happening," Alex said, watching his instruments. "Roy's brain activity is off the charts, but it's not chaotic like the others. It's like he's running a complex diagnostic program." Inside the mental link, Roy was having what he would later describe as the most interesting technical challenge of his life. The observer's consciousness was like a very complicated machine that was not working properly. Roy could sense the alien's confusion and distress, and his natural instinct was to find a way to help. Roy began unconsciously modifying the mental probe itself, adjusting it to work better with human brain patterns. He was reverse engineering alien technology in real time, the same way he would figure out how to repair an unfamiliar piece of equipment. The observer tried to retreat, but Roy's mind had locked onto the problem of alien-human communication. Like a dog with a bone, Roy was now analyzing the fundamental differences between human and alien consciousness, looking for ways to build better interfaces between the two types of minds. "I think Roy is trying to fix the alien," Danny said with amazement. "Look at his expression. That's the same face he makes when he's working on a really interesting problem." Roy's face was indeed showing the intense concentration he used when diagnosing complex technical problems. His eyes were closed, but his forehead was wrinkled with thought, and his hands were moving slightly as if he was manipulating invisible tools. The observer's form began to collapse as it experienced something no Zanari had ever encountered before. A subject species was analyzing the analyzers, trying to understand and improve the very process being used to study them. Roy was not just passively allowing his mind to be examined, he was actively examining the examiner. Roy's consciousness was like a storm of creative problem-solving that the observer could not escape from. Every time the alien tried to understand one aspect of Roy's thinking, Roy would notice the alien's confusion and try to adjust his thoughts to be more helpful. This created loops within loops of mutual analysis that grew more complex with each passing second. "The alien is fragmenting," Kate warned. The observer's light was scattered across the cargo bay in dozens of separate points, each one flickering rapidly and independently. Roy was simultaneously running multiple diagnostic processes in his head. He was analyzing the observer's mental structure, designing better communication protocols, thinking about how alien technology could be integrated with human systems, and composing a mental report about what he was learning. All of this was happening while he continued to monitor the ship's systems automatically, because that was his job. But the final breaking point came when Roy began to feel sorry for the confused alien and started trying to teach it better ways to understand human minds. His consciousness reached out to the observer like a patient teacher showing a student how to use a new tool. The observer's form exploded into thousands of tiny lights that scattered across the cargo bay like stars. The alien consciousness was experiencing complete system failure as Roy's mind wrapped around it with helpful, caring, problem-solving energy that was impossible to resist or escape. The lights flickered once and vanished entirely. Roy opened his eyes and looked around the empty cargo bay with confusion. "Where did it go?" he asked. 3 days passed with no sign of life from the observer's crystal ship. It floated in space like a broken ornament, dark and cracked and silent. The crew of the Terra Nova watched it carefully, but nothing moved inside the damaged structure. Jake was starting to think the alien might be dead when Alex called out from his science station, "Captain, I'm getting energy readings from the crystal ship. It's very weak, but something is happening." Jake floated over to look at the instruments. The readings were barely above background levels, but they were definitely coming from the alien. "Vessel, is it trying to repair itself?" "Maybe," Alex said. "Or maybe it's finally waking up." 20 minutes later, a small section of the crystal ship began to glow with pale light. The glow spread slowly across the surface like dawn breaking over a dark planet. The cracks remained, but light was moving through them like golden veins. Observer's voice appeared in their heads again, but it sounded completely different than before. Weak and humble, like someone who had been through a terrible experience and learned something important from it. "Captain Morrison," the observer said quietly, "I speak with you and your crew. I believe I understand now. Are you okay?" Kate asked even after everything that had happened. She was still concerned about the alien's well-being. "I am changed," the observer replied. "What I experienced with your people has altered my understanding of consciousness itself. Need to explain what I have learned." Jake gathered his crew in the main conference room, a small space with a round table and chairs bolted to the floor. The observer appeared slowly in the center of the room, but its form was different now. Smaller, less bright, and somehow more solid-looking than before. "First, I must apologize," the observer began. "I approached your species with assumptions that were completely wrong. I thought your minds would be like all the others I have studied. I was not prepared for what I found." "What? Did you find that was so different?" Alex asked. He had been analyzing the data from all 3 probe sessions and was still confused by what had happened. The observer's form flickered slightly as it gathered its thoughts. In 3,000 previous species, consciousness was organized like libraries. Thoughts were stored in predictable places. Memories were filed in orderly sections. Emotions and logic were kept separate. When we examined these minds, we could read them like books. "But human minds are different?" Danny asked. "Human minds are not libraries," the observer said. "They are more like living storms. Every thought connects to every other thought, through pathways that change constantly. You do not just think one thing at a time. You think many things simultaneously, and all of these thoughts influence each other in ways that create new thoughts." Lisa leaned forward in her chair. "Is that why you had so much trouble with us?" "Partly, yes, but there is more." The observer paused, as if trying to find the right words. "Engineer Foster showed me that human memories are not just storage containers. They're active networks that combine past experiences with present situations to create new understanding. When I tried to examine one memory, it triggered hundreds of related memories and emotions all at once." Danny nodded. "That sounds about right. When I think about my dog Rex, I also think about responsibility and loss and love and home and a bunch of other things." "Exactly," the observer said. "But Communications Officer Parks showed me something even more disturbing. Humans can process multiple streams of complex information simultaneously while also thinking about thinking itself. You have what we might call metaconsciousness. You are aware that you are aware." "Doesn't everyone think about their own thinking?" Greg asked. "No," the observer replied firmly. "Of the 3,000 species I have studied, only humans demonstrate this level of self-reflective consciousness. Other species respond to stimuli and solve problems, but they do not constantly analyze their own mental processes while having those processes." Roy scratched his head. "So we're weird because we think about thinking?" "You are unique because you think about thinking while doing other thinking about other things all at the same time," the observer explained. Maintenance technician. "Jenkins showed me the most remarkable thing of all." "What was that?" Roy asked, looking curious. "You tried to fix me," the observer said simply. "While I was examining your consciousness, you were examining mine and attempting to repair what you perceived as flaws in my mental processes. No other species has ever analyzed the analyzer." The crew looked at each other with surprise. They had not realized that Roy's instinct to help and fix things was so unusual. "Is that bad?" Roy asked. It is unprecedented," the observer replied. "But it revealed the most important truth about your species. Humans are not just individual consciousnesses. You are components of a collective intelligence that operates through what you call culture, intuition, and social connection. Alex frowned. What do you mean by collective intelligence? The observer's form brightened slightly as it tried to explain. Each human mind is designed to connect with other human minds. You constantly send and receive subtle mental signals through body language, tone of voice, and unconscious communication. You share thoughts and emotions without realizing you are doing it. Are you saying we're telepathic? Lisa asked. Not in the way my people understand telepathy, the observer said. But yes, in a limited way. Human consciousness evolved to work. In groups, individual humans are incredibly complex, but when humans work together, they create something even more complex. A group intelligence that is greater than the sum of its parts. Jake thought about his crew and how they worked together. Is that why you had so much trouble reading our minds? Yes. I was trying to understand individual human consciousness, but there is no such thing. Human consciousness is always connected to other human consciousness, even when you are alone. Your thoughts are shaped by every other human you have ever known. Your memories include not just your own experiences, but also stories and knowledge passed down from countless other humans. Kate looked amazed. So we're all connected? More connected than any species I've encountered, the observer confirmed. When Engineer Foster thought about his dog, he was also accessing cultural knowledge about the relationships between humans and animals that has been built up over thousands of years. When Communications Officer Park processed multiple information streams, she was using techniques developed by millions of humans over centuries. When Maintenance Technician Jenkins tried to repair my consciousness, he was applying problem-solving approaches learned from countless other humans. That's why our minds seem so chaotic to you, Danny realized. You were trying to read one person, but you were actually encountering pieces of our entire species. Precisely, the observer said. Individual humans carry within their minds fragments of the collective human experience. You are not separate beings who sometimes cooperate. You are parts of a single, vast intelligence that expresses itself through millions of individual bodies. The crew sat quietly for a moment, trying to understand what this meant. They had always known that humans learned from each other and worked together, but they had never thought of themselves as parts of a larger consciousness. What does this mean for your people? Jake asked. Will they want to study us more? The observer's form dimmed slightly. My people are not equipped to interact with collective consciousness networks. They've always dealt with individual minds that think in predictable patterns. Humanity represents something new in the galaxy, something that will change how intelligence itself is understood. Are we dangerous to other species? Ben asked. He was always thinking about security and potential threats. It's not dangerous, but disruptive, the observer replied. Other species will need to adapt to dealing with a civilization that thinks collectively. While maintaining individual awareness, your expansion into the galaxy will force other cultures to reconsider their basic assumptions about consciousness and intelligence. Will your people come back to study us again? Kate asked. I do not believe so, the observer said. I will recommend that we observe humanity from a great distance and allow you to develop naturally. Direct contact with human consciousness is too overwhelming for our mental processes. So this is goodbye? Lisa asked. For now, yes. But I predict that we will encounter each other again when humanity spreads further into the galaxy. By then, perhaps other species will have learned how to interact with collective intelligence networks. Or perhaps humanity will have learned how to communicate with simpler individual consciousnesses like mine. The observer's form began to fade as it prepared to return to its crystal ship. I leave you with this understanding. You are not just another species exploring the galaxy. You are a new form of consciousness that will change the balance of intelligence throughout the cosmos. Your minds, which seem normal to you, are actually the most complex and powerful cognitive networks we have ever encountered. As the alien figure disappeared, Jake looked around at his crew with new understanding. They were not just 25 humans on an exploration mission. They were 25 components of a vast collective intelligence that spanned their entire species. Asterisk.